David, are you live? We'll have a recording. Okay, I'll have a recording now. We'll have it. I'll have a recording now. We'll have it. David, are you ready with that? I'll have a recording. David, are you ready with that?
Welcome to the City Advertising and Promotion Commission special meeting on May 4th, 2020, 6 p.m. We're at the Carroll County West Point District. Welcome to the City Advertising and Promotion Commission. Tonight will consist of 5 special meetings, which will be opened and closed, as we'll have one item to discuss with each of the meetings. The reasons for having these meetings will be discussed within the special meeting of number 1. Please turn your phones to silent, and I'll do roll call. Greg Moon.
Here.
Terry McCollum.
I'm here.
Bobby Foster. Here. James
Here.
DeVito. Jeff Carter.
Here.
And Susan Hunt. Here. And Carol Manley Wright is here. Okay, we are going to now open a special meeting to talk about item number 1, which is the consideration of the position of technical director, unless anyone would like to reorder the folks that we're talking about tonight, the positions that we're talking about tonight. All right, position of technical director, we will discuss, but I wanted to involve everybody in why we're having this meeting tonight. We, as commissioners, need to do our due diligence in terms of revenues collected and how our money is being spent. Right now, we are going to be under the following restraints. Restaurants only have curbside service through 5/11. On 5/11, they can open with 33% occupancy. We have 2 members of the commission who are restaurateurs, and there are many others that have expressed that it will be difficult for them to open at that date, some because 33% is not enough for them to really make a living. The next iteration of this will raise your capacity to 66%. These things obviously not only affect the restaurateurs, they affect us as a commission. Lodgings, all out-of-state visitors are still banned under EO 20-13. In-state, that's basically keeping people from out of state from staying in Arkansas. It looks like 5/15 will be the date. That's the date when the state parks open their cabins, when it's going to be easier for people without the state and certainly within the state to stay at facilities. So that would be mid-month this month. Gatherings. The state is still having social distancing of 6 feet with limits of 10 or less in place. Right now, the governor and the mayor are asking people not to gather in large groups until really September 1st. It's thought that date may possibly change to August 1st in terms of the governor.
They were referring to as large groups.
10 or more.
No, I heard it either.
All right, what did you hear today? Kim, you can, oh yeah, Susan.
I say that not all of the stuff that you're saying, but some of that stuff that you are saying, especially this last one that you just said is untrue. And I don't think it is our place to be, unless we have it written exactly from the governor, because he did have a conference today, and he did change some of the recommendations on outdoor events. I think it is very dangerous for us to be quoting these things right now at this time.
Okay, and I did check this out yesterday, so I mean, I have caught that today. The gatherings, if that is changed right now, though I understand that our mayor is not going to be issuing permits through September 1st for gatherings outside or inside. Yes, sir.
And that also, my understanding, is a fluid thing as well, depending on governor's what he
Right.
institutes as far as guidelines.
And I can only report what I know of
Right.
as of today. So
Understand.
the reason for
But
having,
the way you're stating is that it's an absolute definite. and-
no, I
and it's
think
really
I
not.
even said a moment ago that these dates could possibly change. Okay, and so in light of these things, and in light of what may happen with the virus, would it come back this summer? Possibly. These are things that are talked about, might come back in the fall. These are all things that might impact not only our collectors' ability to make a living, but also our ability as a commission to collect taxes from them.
Might I interject?
Yes,
Just a few minutes ago on the Little Rock News, polling Arkansas residents as to whether or not they would come out. 80% said no, if they won't.
come out for,
Or to go to a restaurant, to go to, anything, any event. So regardless of what we do, it's all going to be up to what the general public does. And right now, it doesn't look good.
so in light of that, we had talked somewhat about reviewing our staff at a recent meeting, keeping in mind that for some of them, if we should decide to furlough them or have them go part-time, they may have an option to replace that income. And I believe that would apply to everyone who is working for us. Some people have terms where we have to notify them 90 days in advance if we terminate their contracts. So that's what we need to talk about each position independently tonight. The first person would be the technical director. The first position would be the technical director. That's the person who does sound for the auditorium and many other things. Do I have any recommendation about how we might employ, furlough, make part-time this person, yes, this position.
She was stepping.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, my understanding, and I know we've had several special meetings here, my understanding is that it is not the decision of the commission to hire or fire those individuals. It is the responsibility of the interim director at this point, or the director. It is our responsibility to review the budget and decide whether or not we have enough money to pay those that are currently being paid by the CAPC in that position, whether it is a staff member or whether or not it is a contractor. So I guess what I would say in consideration of this special meeting, yes, we do know that we will have things that will affect our budget, absolutely. But it is not our job to decide whether or not that person is in that job or not in that job at this time. It is the interim director's job to do that talking and that discussing with that particular person, whether it be positive or negative to them. It is our job to look at the budget and say, this is how much we can afford for salaries. We do have the responsibility to hire or fire the interim director, the director, or the finance director. And we can absolutely have the discussion as to what we think should happen with both of those. But in my opinion, the only thing that we can do is look at the budget and say, this is how much we're going to have to cut. And for those particular positions, allow the interim director to decide who will stay and who will go.
It's my opinion that we could at least make a recommendation to the interim director about contracted positions. So I would like to at least have the discussion tonight, and we will get a ruling on that from the city attorney going forward, because two of our contracted workers are people that are more impacted by, do we have work to do, meaning do we have tourists in town? Yes, ma'am.
No, I think Terry was,
Okay.
Well, and so, you know, for the sake of discussion, I mean, we can discuss Ron's position, interim director. And what he does, and Ron, as the person in that position, he's been in that position for a long time. He knows the auditorium inside and out. He's there all the time. So we've had problems in that building before when there's not been anyone there, and no one's checking it on a regular basis, that it has gone downhill, ended up being condemned. You know, we had couldn't have anything in there. We've come too far to go back to those days. And so I think it's important to have somebody in this. Now to add to his duties as far as during this time, you know, if we want to have somebody, you know, work some canned music over at the Basin Park, say, not live entertainment, but you can still have music playing, so at least you've got a background. Something like that might be a good thing, but you know, that he can take care of. We're getting too close. And if things evolve as we hope that they will evolve, we're gonna need the staff.
Well, would it be a problem? Oh, yeah, go ahead, Jeff. Sorry.
So here's a situation, okay, for me, in that I agree that this is kind of clear as mud. And so I've read statutes, I've read laws, I've looked at what's the responsibility of the commission as a whole. And you look at that, our job is to oversee taxpayer dollars. And then outside of that, there would normally be a set of bylaws. This group, this commission, should have bylaws on how we operate and function. We do not. There are no bylaws. They give us the ability to either agree with Susan or agree with anyone else. But we actually need a set of bylaws in place to organize this in such a manner so that we know how we should interject with staff and with budgets and with these things.
I don't see much difference between the president and Congress. Yes, I agree with Susan about the authority of the director, but we also control the person. If we choose not to fund the director, position, then, we have that ability.
So, and I think we do have a serious budget, right? So we're looking at numbers here, and somewhere in this budget, we are going to be short.
Well, let me ask the question. Has there not been a vehicle for independent contractors now to get unemployment insurance? Well, the
Yeah.
fact is, it is, and we need to anticipate that and act accordingly. We look at, we're in a situation where all of our collectors are taking it on the chin.
Yeah.
For us to just keep paying the positions like there was tourists coming to town and we were doing business, I think that's not accepting responsibility on our part.
Here. You had mentioned,
No, that's-
Susan.
And I don't disagree with you. I just think that it is our responsibility to look at the budget overall. And if we say we're going to cut salary budget by 50%, 60%, so whatever it is, based on what we think our revenues or our tax collections will be, then it is the decision of the interim director to decide which positions are the most important. And I would like for that position to still have some semblance of authority within the CAPC, as opposed to the commission just outright saying, we don't want this person, or we don't want this person, or we don't want this person. Because inevitably, the budget is going to determine how much we can pay out in salaries. And we have to decide, without naming this person or that person, who our essential workers are and who we want under there as far as keeping on board. My understanding is, I did get a couple phone calls, and my understanding is that there were a couple phone calls made to some of our contractors by commissioners discussing whether or not they would be open to being furloughed or to continue on or not to continue on. And unfortunately, the commission had, as a whole, not talked about that. So it put a lot of stress and strain on some of these contractors. In my opinion, that is not the decision of one or two commissioners to do outside of the entire commission. I do think, again, going back to our budget, this is how much money we think we're going to have. Gina, give us your recommendations on who needs to be cut or who needs to stay on. I think that's how it should work.
Well, I think taking that into mind, we probably should talk about the budget briefly. We've gotten some budget, I'm a big part of our insurance.
I was just gonna say, I think in keeping with Gina handling this, I'd like to make a recommendation that we even look at the possibility of amending these contracts. You know, I think any contract could be amended. We all know the situation we're in. I've got two businesses that haven't ran since March 19th, as well as everybody else in here. We know where we are, and so do these contractors. They're smart people, they're business people. So could we not talk to them and look at some amending of the contracts as we get through this time? This is just an idea.
Well, the unenviable situation we find ourselves in as far as our budget goes is the only viable sector of our economy right now is retail, which we do not get a tax from. The two sectors that we do get the tax from are virtually zero. It's just the hard facts of reality. We have a responsibility to this budget. We have to take advantage of the options that are out there for our employees outside of the CAPC, and these are options that in my business history have never been available. So we have to keep in our mind to take advantage of what both the state and the federal government is offering for employees that are laid off. That they're, you know, I would like to be making as much as my employees right now with their state and federal weekly take is substantial, which is one of the reasons I'm not bringing them back right now.
Well, I think, that, I'm not sure how the contract reads, if we can actually
You're talking about Ron's
run
contract?
contract as far as, you know, I mean, you either terminate the contract, there's not any kind of a layoff clause or anything like that in there, I don't believe.
No, there's actually not. So Ron has two contracts for this year. So Ron had a 1-year contract. Okay, and this contract was signed by Lacey. This was signed by Lacey Eckberg on November 15th, 2019. And you guys are welcome if anyone wants to look at that. This was a 1-year deal for 2020, and then Ron's contract was actually updated in March, March 3rd by Gina. Okay, so Gina issued Ron a 3-year deal. And honestly, it's poorly written, the contract is, but it clearly states that we can operate this without Ron's permission. Okay, and so that's the way I read this, but I would highly recommend that we turn this particular contract over to the attorney and have him interpret it, because there's some lines in here that either there's typos or I don't understand some of this language, and I think it needs to be interpreted. But I would like to point out that I don't understand, to me, this commission, and we're supposed to oversee taxpayer dollars, and Gina made a deal with Ron for 30 years. I'd like clarification on the line.
That's correct. She's in charge. She should do that.
It's still taxpayer money, and
Yes.
I don't
But we still have a
understand.
responsibility to keep up buildings, the grass has to be mowed, things have to be taken care of.
I do
So you can't
understand.
just get rid of it.
No, I'm not, nowhere did I say that I thought we should get rid of it.
There was a 1-year contract.
There was a 1-year deal that was in place, and the 1-year deal went from 1 year to 3 year. And the reason why it went from 1 year to 3 year is because there's some kind of a handshake agreement that Ron would go out and buy more sound equipment for us to use. And I just don't understand that, and I don't understand why this was not brought to the commission for us to talk about.
But that's Gina's employee.
So we
That's the
probably
bottom line.
should, but again, to go back to, that's an opinion, because we don't have bylaws to go through and say this is how this should work. Every other MP in the state has bylaws and we don't. So
Yes, ma'am.
Well, I got a copy of that contract today too, and after reading it, I started Googling things and asked my daughter, who's a law school graduate, to Google some things for me. And it said that in the case of a contract like this, that there is no clause that lets somebody out. If 2 people are of the same mind,
Sure.
you sit down with them and have a meeting, any kind of contract can be amended. I think the first step would be to go to Ron and say, Ron, obviously you realize the position we're in. Let's talk about this. I mean, that's how I would do it if I was there, it was my business.
completely
So,
agree, and
I think that's what we
we
should
could have had
let,
it last month. Before this was-
I think
that's
we
my
should
fault.
let Gina,
We could have had that conversation last month here as a commissioner.
I think a better course of action would be to have Gina here at this time.
Absolutely.
So I hate to say it, but we maybe just spinning our wheels with that tonight.
She and Rick are available last time. We need to call them.
Yes, sir.
Excuse me, Susan.
That's okay.
I think what Bobby's saying is spot on. I think that we need to, discuss, with Gina, you know, some parameters that might include additional things that he might have to cover, or maybe a cut in wages, you know, temporarily until things change. You know, talk with you, you're right. I mean, I agree. You get 2 people to agree, like, you've got things going in there.
So would someone like to, oh, sorry, Susan, go ahead.
Again, I still think it comes down to the budget. We're all saying the same thing. It comes down to the budget. How much do we need to cut from our budget?
I think
Once
my-
we,
Let's
once we have
have
those,
a conversation.
can I finish?
Yes.
Okay. Once we have those numbers, then we have to have that next discussion with Gina, with those individuals that are under her authority and say, what do you think we should do? And then she needs to have that conversation with those particular employees. I just think that us making a decision here is destroying the fabric of not only the staff hierarchy, but also, in some ways, well, I won't say what I'm gonna say. I'm gonna say it's gonna destroy the fabric of the staff hierarchy.
So let's have the budget discussion. Rick had done a projection for us.
Can we discuss
So that's
it?
not what we're talking about here.
Well, but it's
Well, I
reflected.
guess it is.
Yeah, I mean, in order to really
Can't
talk
make a decision.
to everybody, we really need to do that. I mean, it's relevant to what we're talking about. So I think Rick's projections showed us being where, does somebody have that?
I think it's on the back page of this.
And I think his were probably based on the dates that I talked about earlier, the restaurants, hotels opening, and the September 1 date, which we said may change. So where was his number? Do you have that?
310,000, is that from what I'm reading that last page?
Is it on profit and loss?
Yeah, it's on this page 11.
Yeah.
Of this report that he gave us, total of 310,000.
That was a report he gave us last month.
Now, this report came in today, he.
Oh, okay, so we don't have that report, you do.
Well, he emailed it to me, and I just printed it.
Oh, I didn't.
Okay, this is
He
the
emailed
one.
it to everybody. I'm more than glad for you guys.
Okay.
So his projection,
$310,000 down is what he's projecting.
For the year.
For the entire year. That puts our budget at 1.2. I actually, and look, these are the numbers, I got a report, I'm looking at the numbers here. We can actually go month by month and we can make our own projection. So here's what I did. I actually came up with my own, and I came out that I'm projecting, and I know these are subject to me, right? But I'm open to you guys telling me what you think is going to be down. And I've got 34%, which would be about roughly $500,000 or a little bit more.
500.
Yeah.
That's where I'm at.
And the city, I think, is projecting 35%. Is that what you guys are discussing?
We haven't.
Okay.
Well, I think that's optimistic.
Yeah, this is totally subjective, right? So here, let me just tell you what I have so you guys can. Okay, so I've got we already know March numbers. We know March was down. So it's April reporting, but March numbers, and we know it was down 44% from what Rick sent us. Okay. And so then I'm still predicting that the next month is still going to be down 85%. So then I'm predicting 75%. And then I'm predicting from June through August that we're going to plateau at about 50%. And just basing that on it, businesses are going to be the third occupancy, right? And so it's to get to 50%, I think might actually be a little bit of a jump. And then if everything goes perfectly, I predicted that we would go to 80%. And then my hope and prayer is that by October, we go to 100%. And that gets me to this 34%. That's assuming that we don't have any problems in this moving forward. So it could go either way, but it most likely could go down a lot.
I just want to make sure that I remember straight. So we were down 44% in March.
For actual March, it was reported in April. And he sent
Okay,
that to
and then
us.
April, we think we'll be down
85%.
85%.
And actually, Rick, his prediction for next month, or our next report, was actually 90%. And I think he's probably closer to 90. But I was just trying to be somewhat optimistic.
And you're saying this month, May would be,
And then I'm hoping for a jump to 50%, and I think that might be where my lead is. So I'm trying to be generous here that everything goes smoothly and that we are able to go from here, phase 1 to phase 2, and then by the last 3 months, we would be whole. And even at that optimism, I'm still at 34% loss, which puts us our total budget at $975,000.
I think it's safe to say that we're gonna be down at least $500,000 without having to go through, individual predictions or anything like that.
It's completely up to you.
Yeah. I mean, it's a given, we're gonna be at least down 2 or 3, because we know we have no income coming in April, and probably no income coming in March. So, and each of those months, if you compare April, got 115,000 that we took in 2019 in April. We didn't take that in this year. We will not take anything close to that in May either, so.
And what Jane said is absolutely right, is that I'm presuming that the last 3 months, that consumer confidence will be good enough in us that they'll come here. And I think that's a pretty big leap. So for me, 34% is probably the best, this is probably the best case that we're gonna have. That's 34% drop, which is, we've got to figure out how to get down to $975,000. That's this month, and then we can adjust it every month as what we see, how close we are to these projections, or whatever projections. I'm not trying to tell you what to project. These are my projections, just based on seeing businesses. I'm downtown, I see people, I'm watching businesses every day come with trucks and unload their stuff and move it out of town.
The unfortunate thing is the wild card of the virus itself, which has put us in this predicament. The United States has not yet started to go on the downhill cycle. States in close proximity, like Oklahoma, in my opinion, and the opinion of a lot of the medical professionals, are that they've opened too soon. We have the unfortunate distinction, unlike Berryville or Green Forest, where we know who's in our community day to day. We're going to be bringing people in from Oklahoma. We're going to be bringing people in from these other states. We will have another rebound in the next 6 to 8 weeks. The fall season, if everybody in the medical profession is on their game, is that we could see a considerable spike come fall. So if we're at 50%, I'd be happy. I'm afraid we're going to be down more than 60% or even more than that in a year.
I mean, I think it's great if we all have opinions, but at this time, we don't know. Hindsight will be 2020 once we get through this. I think we need to determine how much of a gap or how much of a loss we're going to have. And I think comfortably, we should at least consider $500,000. Now, we also have money in reserve, and we have to determine if we want to use them or we don't want to use them and how we cut the budget. So this discussion should be, well, it was what, 300 something?
Yeah, we got it.
Right, so this discussion should
But
be,
it's figured into,
yeah,
it's part of our balance sheet.
if you want to talk about budget, we should determine where we're at today. If we all agree that we think we're going to be down 35%, and if that equates to 500,000 or 600,000, then that's what we need to do. Next month, we may say, we think it's going to be 20%. I don't know, nobody knows. None of us know, it's ridiculous. So we have to start somewhere. And if we can start there, then we can at least convey that information to our staff so that they can make those recommendations internally and decide what they need to do with the employees. If they want to involve us in that, that's fantastic, but we have to at least direct them that we need to make a cut of this amount. Because we are responsible for the budget.
So at this point, we feel that we'll be $500,000 down. And
We could be.
$500,000 down, and that's a ballpark,
I think that's conservative.
and that's based on today. That can change. We've got another meeting in 2 weeks from today. Oh, actually 4 weeks from today. So we should have more information by then.
We still have to project out.
Yes,
And there's some very big bumps out there that we have to take into consideration. Because this is an unprecedented event that we're dealing with.
I think it would best behoove us, what Susan said. Jeff was saying too, that we need to have a workshop, budget workshop. So we can look at this and then give Tina the direction that we need to. I mean, I really think that's what we did for city council. We met, we had it with Lonnie And we talked budget and we said, we need you to come to us with what you think we need to do to get where we need to be to survive. And, and James is right, it may turn to crap in the fall and we may go broke.
Well,
But we've got to do the best we can, to trim the best we can, but still try and operate as a city. I'm not losing hope.
no,
And so, we've got to, roll the dice the best we can. We may not win, but we're in the game, we're not out of it. We just gotta figure out what our strategy is.
well, since Gina will be handling, the events position and the technical director position.
And also sales.
It's a workshop that needs to be all of us. We need all the staff people, Ron included, Tracy included. We all need to sit down and say, look, this is what we gotta do. This is what we think we need to do. What can we do, including as a possibility is your salary, Can you cut, can you do this, what?
Everybody's freaked out. I mean, everybody's freaked out about whether or not they're gonna have a job or they're not gonna have a job. I think we need to
Across the
do
country.
do this in a professional way, not having individual commissioners call people and get them all scared about losing their job or having to make a decision about what they want to do going forward. It needs to be done as a group. That's how we're set up. We are set up as a commission. Let's follow the guidelines. Let's do this as a team. Let's not, go about doing things on our own and have that discussion, because we know we're going to have a reduction in taxes. We know it already. It's been happening. It's not new to us. We just need to figure out how we go from month to month with a plan. And right now, we don't have a plan.
We do have two staff that report to the commission. That's
We
the
do.
interim director and the finance director. I don't know if anybody would even think about furloughing either of them, but we
You
can talk
can
about.
talk about that, not in this session.
Not in this session, I'm sorry. That's correct. Thank you. So we will discuss them. Yes,
The only thing I would say about that, and this applies to all of the staff, I think when we have this budget meeting, we need to determine who our essential staff are. There's always an essential path of staff, no matter where you are. There's always somebody who's essential, that we feel like if we're in this circumstance or some other circumstance, that we can't not have that position filled. So I think that's another discussion that we need to have, is determining who our essential staff members are. Mind you, we don't have that many, but we need to determine who the essentials are so that we can be guaranteed, as long as there is money, that we will have some functionality happening within that office.
okay, could I get someone to make a motion? Oh, I beg your pardon, sorry.
I would like to make a motion. And what I would like to do is to make a motion that we set a workshop, either the one we've got coming up this next week, a week from Wednesday, or is that our regular meeting?
That's the 13th, it's a workshop.
That's the workshop.
Yeah.
Or another date this week. I know it would have to go based on. your
Mondays or
schedule.
Wednesdays,
Huh?
Mondays or Wednesdays.
Those
I'm
are the
available.
days.
Yes.
I don't think it's something that we need to, let the monster run. So I think we need to roll up our sleeves and do it.
Go ahead, Jerry.
So
What date?
I would like to make a motion that we meet this Wednesday.
At 6 o'clock here.
Well, I mean, that we can do it in the daytime if it works better.
It's a workshop, 4 o'clock.
So, I mean, it could be,
I'll
we
second
can
that.
set it for any time as far as that goes.
Is there any discussion?
And that would be just a.
So we can work on the budget, and we need to have the staff people here.
I
And-
can't fit them here.
Uh,
I'll have to join by Zoom.
They can't be in the room. Because we
I'm
go
limited
over
to
10.
10.
We can't go over 10 people.
How many do we have? We've got, what, 7? So we can.
Well, 9 with these two. So we're.
Okay, well then we should have Gina here at the very least.
yeah, we need Gina to be the.
And we'll have to ask her. she's been wanting to work from home.
Well,
If
let's
she
ask
can't,
her, then we'll figure it
you know, let her Zoom and let Rick be here.
out. Okay.
So
We'll
either
figure it
one
out.
of them.
Yeah, I would say Rick be here and have Zena Zoom.
Okay.
It's not the same, but it's
Okay, I'm gonna second your motion, and your motion is for,
a workshop, budget workshop,
at what time and what date?
next Wednesday, this coming Wednesday, which is day after
Sixth,
tomorrow,
May
The
6th at 4 o'clock.
at 4 p.m.
Here.
right here.
Now, is there any discussion in terms of what we had planned on talking about tonight? Or does it all depend on your opinion on the budget?
It's all budget. I mean, we either have money or we don't have money. I mean,
If we'll vote on this, if there's discussion, we'll vote on this, and then I'll make it.
Okay, anybody have a problem being here Wednesday? It's just a while here. Wednesday, okay, that's good. We'll take a vote, we have to do each person. Greg Moon,
I agree.
Terry?
Yes.
Bobby? Yes. James?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Sorry.
yeah,
Yes.
Susan. Okay, so, the commission will meet this Wednesday at 4 o'clock here at the court to talk about what we need to do in terms of the budget, where we are right now, where we think we will be, best case, worst case scenarios, and then how to move forward from that. Yes, you had another.
And that will be Rick present and Gina Zoom.
Is that, or you want to
I
ask
thought we were
Gina?
gonna find out.
We're gonna ask Gina first.
Oh, okay.
Prefer to have Gina.
Gina would be here, Rick watching, and then she.
Yeah, the other, all three of the others are, how many there is.
Yeah.
Four. There's one
There's
here.
5 total.
I do have a second motion, and that motion would be to table these other, all the other,
Special meeting.
individual special meetings we have tonight. To such a time that we, we need to revisit them, after we do budget.
Okay, he seconded.
This-
So this is a vote to table all of the things we're going to talk about, the positions we're going to talk about tonight until after our budget meeting. Greg Moon,
Yes.
Terry? Bobby? Yes. James?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
Okay. Well, we have to close the special meeting, so.
That's what it's doing.
We never,
Yeah.
we never went into,
Yeah, that's all.
that's
it
all
is.
we went into.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Second,
Yeah.
Greg Moon?
Yes.
Yeah.
Terry? Bobby? James? Jeff?
Yes.
Susan?
yes.
Okay, great, that's great.
Thank you all.
All over. Bring your council with you.
Right, it's mine. Oh, wait, you can't have two